Resounding, unanimous agreement on airplanes. Let's build a airplanes Rails app. So how do I do that? Well, I need to start a new Rails project, right? Wouldn't it be nice if there was something, right? Cool project, right? Notice how this like literally does not affect your app whatsoever. I'm just gonna name it cool project. Yeah? It should be something like airplanes. This is just for your understanding, right? Wow, Rails is so powerful. Then it bundles for me. Can I immediately run Rails something right here? Rails something. Rails G, Rails generate, Rails S, Rails C. Yes, I absolutely cannot because I'm not in the cool project, right? I have to get inside cool project. Now I have access to the Rails command. Cool? It's a very common like little thing. You're like, my Rails doesn't work. And I'm like, well, you're not in the Rails project, so. And that's okay. So, what now? What do we need to do to build out this airplane project? Yes, sir. Name equals, right? So, Rails will generate for you a model and a controller using the Rails generate model. And then you just specify the model name. And then you can give it the attributes, right? Something like, I don't know. What? Okay, sweet. So like wings is an integer. And then what else? So like I guess like, yeah, like what is the model name here, right? And that's going to be a string. Do I have to put string? No. Wow, that was resounding, powerful. No? Cool. And then like all the other attributes, right? And then I will have to do something like Rails G controller. Let me just do this for you. Right? I have to do like Rails G controller for my airplanes. Airplans. Oh my god. Cool, right? And that will build what for me? What does Rails G model build for me? It builds the model, right, which is the class, and then it builds the migration for me, right, with all the attributes that I listed. What does Rails G controller build for me? It builds the airplanes controller. What else? It adds a views folder, right? An empty views folder called airplanes, all right? Does it do anything else? That's the model. Cool. So I'm going to teach you one more thing. If I wanted, and I knew that I had a controller and a model that I needed to add, I can simply do resources. All right, with the airplane. I'm sorry, Rails G, I think it's resource. Airplane. And that had like a model, which is like a string, right? Like the B-52 or 747 or cool plane or something, right? And then we had wings here, and that was like an integer. And we're cool for this for now, right? Just in terms of like the model itself. Let's see what it builds. Bloop. Cool. Great, thanks Rails. Wow, powerful. It built a lot of things for me. Let's take a look. Built the model and the migration, just like Rails G model would build for me. It builds the controller. It builds an empty airplanes folder in my views, just like the controller would. So look like so far, it combines model and controller. Rails G model, Rails G controller. Maybe write some tests in here. Something about routes. Interesting. Well, let's take a look. Whoa, easy, man, easy. Easy. Cool. Let's take a look. In my controllers, I have my airplanes controller. In my models, I have my airplane model. In my migration, I have a migration. Then something about routes. Wow. It built all the routes for me. So just to go over one more time. Rails G controller will build my controller and an empty views folder. Rails G model will build my model and my migrations. Rails G resource will build the model, the migration, the controller, and add resources to my routes. Powerful, right? Sweet. So let's do this. Let's build them out one by one. Ready? I can pass it another parameter and do only. And this can be the index. So we'll start with the index, right? What does this mean? Let's take a look at, okay, we don't need this. Let's take a look at, I don't have any Chrome open. Boop, boop. Let's go to localhost 3000. If I want to check it inside my terminal, I can run Rails routes. And here I see a prefix, or these helpers. A get to /airplanes points to my airplanes controller with an action of index. If I wanted to see it inside the browser, I can go localhost 3000, Rails info routes, Rails info. Oh. I didn't migrate, right? Whoopsie daisy. Rails DB. And then Rails S. I can always check the routes here, and I will see this path, this helper called airplanes path, and it builds me get to /airplanes, going to my airplanes controller, pointing at an action of index. Cool? So what does that mean? That means I have access to get to /airplanes. So localhost 3000, a get to /airplanes will give me well, in my routes, get to /airplane says, is there an airplanes controller? Is there a method called index? Do I have an airplanes? Yeah. Do I have an airplanes controller? Do I have a method called index? Wonder what will happen. Wow, could not find index inside the airplanes controller. Powerful error messages. And remember, it's just because I understand how Rails is working, so now I can effectively debug. These error messages are more useful to me. So, oops, that's not gonna work. What does this do now? What will Rails do for me in this defined index? Right, exactly. It will find the index. It will do nothing with the model because I don't tell it. And then what is the response? It will automatically, implicitly render index, right? The name of the method. Index is not special. It will only always render the name of the method here. So what should the error message be, or will it run? It's going to try to render index, right? Cool. Where can I find this index? Empty. Empty. So there is no index file. There's no HTML template. Missing template. My God, this is good. Thank you, Rails. Right? So, cool. Let's build it. Index.erb. Right? H1. Index for my planes. Cool. And then what? Well, let's just see if it worked. Cool. Right? Do I need anything from the model for my index? What do I need? Right? I want to see all my planes. How would I get them? Will this work inside my views? Why? Here. I can name anything I want, right? Like aeroplanes, right? So inside my index file, you're correct. Whoever said that, you are correct. So do I have access to aeroplanes? Cool. It looked like a ruby. Very good. Thank you. All right.
You have an S in the index, not S in the index.
Very good. You guys are going to be so great in JavaScript. So A. Cool. Maybe A dot model or something like that. That was like the attribute as opposed to A just being the object. Right? Cool. What should I see when I refresh? Nothing. Why? I have no airplanes inside my database. So airplanes.all will return an empty array. As I iterate through this empty array, nothing will happen. Cool? So let's do that real quick. So there's two ways to do it. I can either build the new and the create and create them with my form, or I can go into my database in the Rails console and build them manually. What would you like to do? Who says form? Who says console? Form it is. 7 to 0. Cool. Right? How would I do this? How would I build, right? This would be a deliverable, right? Like right now, all you have is a working index page. And now my deliverable is, I say, hey, I need a page to be able to create a new airplane. How would I do it? Where would I start? And what am I thinking? You have an idea? Yeah. Perfect. Def create also? Why? Right? This is just going to give me the form for the user input. Exactly right. This is actually going to be using the active record, right, dot save or the dot create in here, right, on the model. Yes? That sounds like Sinatra. Right. Yeah, again, Rails is, it extrapolates a lot of these like hard-coded things. But yeah, somewhere in the Rails config, it will literally do this. It will go, hey, in my controllers, give me everything in here, and then you just use them. Right? Whereas like in the config.ru for Sinatra, I have to like manually hard-code them in. Cool? But very good question. So, anyone want to continue this right here? Is this all I need? Okay, what else do I need? Yes, but a button on the index that says new. Okay. Okay. All of that is correct. I was just looking for one step. You gave me all 9. I like where your head's at, and that's good. I didn't want to cut you off, but you got it. So here's what I'm thinking, right, in terms of like the whole story arc. I need to be able to make this new plane, right? I need at least one method to kind of handle it. But the first thing the user is going to have to do is I need to be able to see this new page, right? This actual form. In order to even get the form, there must be a route to the form. Otherwise, I can build everything, but if the user can never hit it, doesn't make sense to me. So I'd like to start at the route. So let's go to the routes. And I can do one of two things. I can either do, how would I get this page? I would get to something, some custom method, right? Like new plane, please, right? And this is going to point to the airplanes controller. So I can point to the airplanes controller with a method of like new plane or just new or whatever I want. Cool. Great. Now that that's done, if I did not build it, if I did not build this airplane's new, I would build it now at this point, but I have it already. And so if I were to now go to new plane please, right, literally right here, what will happen? Get to new plane please from the user will point to the airplanes controller add action of new, airplanes controller add action of new, then it will implicitly render the new form. So if I don't do anything else, what should I see and what will happen?
Error, we can't find the views.
There is no views for new, right? Because this does not exist, has not been built. So let me do that. In my views, in my airplanes, I can do new.erb, right? Now, I'm just gonna drop H2 and just be like, make a new plane. Right, good answer, good answer, cool. Here is where I'm gonna actually build out all of this stuff, right? I remember in Sinatra, I had some sort of form, right? We saw this in the 7Cs lab. There was like a form here, and it did like input. But here, we gotta do it right, you know what I'm saying? I showed you the right thing to do. This is a form for, this is like a label for, cool? So far, so good. I haven't like wrote anything else yet. I just have this form, and I know at some point I need to submit, right? So far, so good. What should I see if I go to this route? Remember, I go to new plane please. A get to new plane please exists. It's going to hit airplanes with new. It hits airplanes controller, new action, rendering new, and new is right here. I should see this. So, bloop. Make a new plane. Great. Wait, that's embarrassing. Cool, right? So, I can also do the restful route, airplanes / new. That would be the restful route. If I were to go back to new plane please, what will happen? It should break because the new plane please route no longer exists. Wow, routing error. No route matches. Get to new plane please. So good. So this is the restful route. This is the restful convention. So I can simply, in my resources, ready? Because this is all I have right now. I have a get to airplanes new, pointing to airplanes new, with this helper that Rails built me for this. If I ever want to change this helper, I can simply do as, and then I can change the helper path. So look very closely right here. It's whatever I want to name it. If I do not include it, airplanes new path. How did it know that? Well, it sees airplanes new. It just said airplanes new path. It just built it for me because it sees literally the word airplane and new. Cool? We do airplanes new, click here, see what happens. I wonder where it got it from. It's not magic, right? A little bit of magic. Cool? So you see how I do this route here? The restful route is exactly this. This is the convention, right? So I can comment this out, and I can simply say only make this an array. And instead of index, I also want the new. Oh, snap. Just kidding. Bloop, bloop, bloop. Cool, right? Resources, only index, only new. If I hit refresh, I will see this new. Remember, the resources builds all those restful routes, right? So if I were to get rid of this, hit save, I will get all my restful routes. Yeah? I could specify only which ones that I want. by doing this. And it will literally give me only index and new. Are there any questions on routing?
I guess what is the benefit of specifying only
Let's just say you're building a website, right? Like Twitter or something. And it does not have edit. Do you want the edit route to exist? No. You don't. There's a security.
But if you don't build out a form, then they couldn't edit anything.
Not necessarily true. If the route exists, it will touch your server. Now, let me ask you this. Who remembers code they wrote about routes in Sinatra? Do you remember them? All the routes that you built? Very likely not, right? And that was 3 days ago. When you're building an application, you will very quickly forget something that you wrote a few days ago. Happens all the time. If you expose these open routes, right? If I were to do, let's just say, for whatever reason, I'm building this bank app, right? I can never edit, update, or delete my bank account, right? I can only see all my bank accounts, and then I can click on one and see exactly how poor I am, right? And that's just index and show. If I do not specify index and show, and I simply built all the routes like this, somebody who is much better at coding than all of us in here can simply do, right, a localhost 3000 / let's say I have index and show, and I'm working on those features currently, but there's this edit path that is open. So can I do airplanes /1/edit? What will happen? Edit cannot be found for the airplanes controller, right? There are ways in which we will definitely not show you that, did this touch my server? Did this route touch my server? Right. The route exists. And so if I look at this, it kind of breaks this, right? There was this abstract controller. The action edit could not be found, but it's different from no route matches. Notice how it does different things, right? This hits this middleware, and then this, however, attempts to touch other files inside my application. I can, with the power of JavaScript, if it's touching other files, I can make it do what I want. I do not want these routes, which are essentially doors to my server, exposed. And if I build these RESTful routes, right, let's just extract this like one extra step. You forgot that you did this, and you're like, I only need the index and show, but I'm going to build all 7. 2, 3, 4 weeks later, right, a new dev joins the team and says, we're using all 7 routes, but I don't see any use of edit, update, or delete. Why did we do this? And then they're going to run it back. They're going to run a command called git blame, which is like hilarious. And it will see, wow, your boy Wangtron made this commit and put resources airplanes. Then they're going to be like, okay, great. You know what? That is weird. Let's jump on a call. And they're going to be like, get on a Zoom with me, the new dev, and the senior architect. It's going to be like, Evans, why did you use resources? I'm like, oh, wow, because I know it's going to build that for me. And then the senior dev is going to be like, yeah, but you're not using edit or delete. So is that an acceptable answer?
No.
2, right? And then 2, it's just great. You're not being very specific about your code, and you've opened up these like extra routes that will hit my server and open up these like backdoors. The other thing is, as you start to work in these groups, right? Do you actually know every single line of code your partner is doing? When you're in Mod 1, you're working on your partner project, right? And then like an hour later, your partner, or 2 hours, just come by like, oh man, hey, I'm done with that feature. You're like, bet, cool, let's see it. Did you evaluate every line of code, and did you have them explain to you every single thing? No, you're just kind of like, all right, cool, let me see it. Awesome, great. Oh, it does this, awesome, great. And then it worked. And then you're like, great, let's build this now. Let's add this new feature. Eventually what's gonna happen is if you added something and you never build on it, you never do like the edit or delete, will you ever monitor the edit or delete routes? If something is wrong with your code and someone's like using your app, and then all of a sudden a user reports, oh, hey, listen, this like new feature doesn't work, and a bug comes up on your app, you're going to jump right into the new feature. You're never going to look at the edit. You're never going to look at the delete. You're going to be like, huh, that's weird. Let me see why new doesn't work. If I open up these routes and I forget about them and I leave them alone, I will never monitor them. If I never monitor them, that becomes even more of a problem. Cool? So only the ones that you want, only the ones that you need, you should be including. Is that acceptable? Sorry for that tangent, but it's very important, all right? So if you're starting to add in routes that you don't need, it's one, bad, and two, it shows me a lack of understanding, but it's not important what I think. It will ultimately be important at your job, right? Like, do you want your boss to be like, this person makes it work, kind of hacky, doesn't really know what they're doing. They're kind of copying and pasting code in, and that's doesn't give me confidence in your abilities if that's happening. Cool?
Is there a way to do it where you do everything yourself?
You mean like, wouldn't it be nice if Rails had some sort of... Cool. Cool? Yeah, so only an except, right? Any other questions?
When you use the custom nicknaming, do you follow the route and anything, or is it just, and then second, if you do that, is that still RESTful routing to have like airplane/new that have a nickname for it that you can also?
Yeah, so what I can do is I can do this. I can just, the question is, if I wanted like a custom helper method that wasn't new airplane path, I wanted to be something else, I would just remove it, all right, and then build it again from scratch as my custom.
You just go over why you want custom.
Okay, great. So airplane's new, custom. Now my custom path is a get to airplanes new. If I wanted my own custom route, I would remove it from the resources because I know now what they built for me, and then I'd build it on my own. In the event I wanted a custom name for it,
Okay.
as opposed to what Rails will build for me. Yeah.
Yeah, no one, the internet doesn't have like new and index everywhere.
Great. I'm just gonna like continue answering questions for the sake of clarity for a lot of this foundational stuff, and then we're actually just gonna build forms in the afternoon. What's up?
If you didn't use except new there, what would you still get both routes?
Okay. This is one of the few times I will actually do it. Cool. If you have questions like this that you can yourself test, if it's not super important to the clarity of the lecture, go ahead and test them, right? This is your chance now to be like, all right, I want to do this, I want to do this. All right, feel free to bring your laptop in here. It's very distracting to me, but if that's the way you want to learn, then like I'm all about supporting that. Yes, sir.